mynews.studio.
Giant squid, hidden mining rigs, and now a treaty that finally sets rules for the lawless seas. Can countries actually protect half the planet that technically belongs to no one?
Today is February 19th, 2026. The High Seas Treaty just came into force last month. That closes a governance gap that's lasted for centuries. Let's break down how we got here. Why did it take nearly 2 decades for the world to agree on rules for waters that aren't under any nation's control?
The high seas cover about 54% of the ocean. For a long time, these waters were pretty much a free-for-all. Industrial fishing fleets operated with almost no oversight, and new threats like deep-sea mining started to appear. There was no single law for conservation or sustainable use. So without a legal framework, how do you prevent overfishing or protect biodiversity?
Up until now, you really couldn't. So what changed on January 17th this year?
That's when the treaty, officially it's called the Agreement on the Conservation and Sustainable Use of Marine Biological Diversity of Areas Beyond National Jurisdiction, became binding international law. It kicked in after 60 countries ratified it last September, and now there are 82 or maybe 83 parties involved. That's considered a historic level of consensus for ocean protection.
But what's actually new here? What does the treaty allow countries to do that they couldn't before?
3 main things. First, governments can now create marine protected areas in international waters. Second, any planned activity in the high seas, whether it's fishing, mining, or scientific research, has to go through a mandatory environmental impact assessment. Third, countries have to make those activities public and coordinate across agencies. There's also a new requirement to share benefits from marine genetic resources. So, things like bacteria or enzymes from deep-sea organisms that could be used in medicine or biotech.
But who's making sure countries actually follow these rules? I mean, there's no ocean police out there.
Good point. There's no single enforcement body. Instead, compliance starts at the national level. Countries are legally required to put the treaty into practice at home. The UN Preparatory Commission is still working out the details, and soon the first Conference of Parties, COP1, will oversee things like compliance, monitoring, and reporting. For now, collective action and transparency are the main tools, and the more countries that join, the stronger the system gets.
Let's look at the benefit-sharing part. How will developing countries, who often don't have ships or labs to reach these marine genetic resources, actually see any benefit?
According to the treaty, benefits, both money and know-how, have to be shared fairly, especially with developing countries. In practice, this will run through something called a clearinghouse mechanism, which is basically a data and resource hub. Developed countries will help fund participation and training, so all parties get access to research, samples, and the results. The goal is to close the technology and resource gap.
What could hold this process back? Is there a chance this ends up being mostly symbolic, not something that changes reality?
Definitely. The biggest risks are that not all major economies have signed on yet, and there could be delays in setting up the treaty's institutions and systems for checking compliance. Until the first Conference of Parties, a lot of details are still unsettled. Even after that, the real challenge is turning those legal promises into real-world action, like actually creating protected areas or stopping illegal fishing.
And if the treaty doesn't work, what's really at stake?
The high seas are critical for regulating climate, absorbing carbon, and supporting life for billions of people. This treaty is central to the global goal to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. If it fails, that target's off the table. So without the treaty, we risk more unregulated exploitation, bigger threats to climate stability, and food security problems.
So, the final prep meetings are coming up in March and April, right? What needs to happen there to make the treaty enforceable?
The New York meeting is key. Delegates have to finalize how to designate marine protected areas, set environmental standards, and agree on how benefits should be shared. If those rules aren't strong and there's not enough funding, this could end up being just a landmark agreement on paper.
It does seem like this treaty is a rare case of countries actually agreeing that some resources are too important to leave unprotected. But will they really follow through?
That's the big question. The treaty is both an acknowledgement of past failures and a promise to do better. But the real test is ahead. Whether governments will deliver on that promise, or if this becomes just another agreement that doesn't change much in practice.
So we're back to that opening question. Can nations actually protect half the planet that belongs to no one? The answer really depends on what happens in the next year.
Thanks for joining us as we unpack the new High Seas Treaty, how it works, what's at stake, and the hurdles ahead.
Stay tuned for updates as the world's biggest ocean experiment unfolds. Thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. You can try it now for free.